Hello, and welcome to episode 348 of the Crate and Crowbar, a PC gaming podcast being recorded on the 11th of November 2020. I'm Marsh Davis, and I'm joined this evening by Double Toms.
Whoa.
Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Tom Senior.
Whoa.
Could we get more Toms on this podcast? Could
yes.
we?
Potentially.
There are so many Toms.
No, I disagree. Toms. I think that's numerically impossible. We have achieved the maximum amount of Toms this podcast can take.
We get Tom Bramwell.
Oh, yeah. My theory has been disproved in a crushing blow of logic.
And Tom Phillips, although I don't know him personally.
We get.
Let's just list Toms we know.
Yeah, Tom York, the lead singer of Radiohead. I'm sure he'd come on and give some gaming opinions.
And those are the three Toms.
That's all of them. That's all of them.
What's been in the news this week? I'll tell you what's been in the news this week.
Okay.
Take-Two have bought Codemasters.
For nearly $1 billion, isn't it?
I mean, that's
it's $1 billion, so it's £759 million.
Right. That's a lot.
That's plenty. It's plenty, isn't it? I feel really good for Cody's, actually, because they've always made like really solid, good racing games, but it always feels like they've not had like mega hits. They've got I particularly love their rally games, and the idea that Take-Two could sort of like perhaps elevate their status, and or they might want them to make different games that aren't about cars. Who knows?
I think I did a preview trip to see maybe like a Colin McRae rally game, and it was one of the few times in my career I was completely out of my element where I just wasn't the right person for this trip at all, and I just was struggling to find anything that I could sort of relate to or understand about a rally game.
Like,
and
the wheels are good.
Well, that's it. It seems to me
nice.
that they didn't. I feel like the advancements they made that matter are not things they could communicate in a preview trip. You know, we didn't get to play it or anything. And so the stuff I remember was just them talking on and on about how when mud flicks onto the paintwork, like the different shaders they use to make that look right. And I'm just like, how do I care about this?
I think I must have been on the same trip as you, because I remember seizing onto that, like, oh, thank God they've got mud build-up. That's something I can care about.
Complete opposite experiences.
If only the cars had just been completely consumed in mud until they were just big mud balls. That would be...
Colin McRae's mud balls. It's like Katamari Damacy, but a rally. You've got to get your mud ball big enough that you can absorb the other cars as you roll over them.
You've invented a much better
game.
sport. Yeah.
There you go.
I also remember they showed off like the deformation of the cars, like how they take damage, and the way to do that rather than show it in game, they were sort of showing that as a tech demo, and they would just fire these like white lozenges at the car, which is like, I now know that's a sort of very capsule colliders are a standard physics thing that use a lot in video games because they're sort of cheap to calculate physics on. But when you don't know that, it's bizarre. They're just firing at what look like giant pills at the cars to show how it like smashes up the wheels and stuff.
I love that Elon Musk actually used that technique in real life to try and demonstrate his giant, stupid new truck about a year ago.
Did he throw giant pills at it?
Someone just threw some sort of pill-shaped rock at the window to demonstrate that it was invincible, and then it smashed the window.
Yes, I remember this.
and then he tried it again, and it smashed the window again. That's what happens with Windows. That's how Windows do. Great stuff.
In a tough field, I think Elon Musk may be the least convincing genius we have on this earth.
He's very good entertainment, though, I think. I mean,
I feel like it's proof of like intelligence not being a linear scale, but more like multiple different axes where you can be good at some things, but a complete dumbass in other ways.
Good. I'm really looking forward to his space flights. Because he put one of his own cars into space, didn't he? Which is, as PR exercises go, one of the most expensive possible ways of promoting your product. But yeah, as soon as they put actual humans up there and the humans perhaps start dying, things might change. Also, not video gaming news, but Virgin made a Hyperloop, and it's slower than most trains. So that's been my favourite thing on Twitter today.
Weirdly, I was watching a a very softly spoken man completely debunk Elon Musk's loop earlier. Just a 40-minute video about why it's shit.
It's just wrong. Yeah. Build a train instead. Turns out, like, oh, that tech exists already. It's proven. You just need to build it. But yes, anyway, I found that very entertaining.
Talking of things that have already been built, BioWare are thanks. I was
Nice.
quite pleased with that short notice segue. BioWare are remastering Mass Effect and also, predictably enough, making a new one of them.
Yeah, the remaster is a thing that people have been crying out for ages, and I didn't really care until they said they are doing it, and then I'm like, wait, I do want that, because I think it's all going to be like one package, right? All three of the games and all the DLC and everything all kind of rolled into one. And I really fancy a replay of that whole series, but I bet going back to one is pretty rough these days.
I tried it a few years ago, and it's all corridors all the time, Tom. There's an extent to which you can get away with brutalist architecture, but there's also a big part of it is just the engine can't do much more than that. So you go through a lot of kind of just quite grey hallways. It's still great though. I still love the vibe of it. I think the writing's still brilliant, and the characters, the companions in that series are immense, and the way that they develop across the three games is fantastic.
Yeah, that's the real payoff. I think Mass Effect 1, I still agree that the especially the sort of plot, the narrative structure, I guess, and the driving force of that plot was way more compelling than any of the others for me. I was totally just kind of gripped by it and on board from the word go, and really invested in chasing Saren. And then some of the others, Mass Effect 2 especially, the high level plot really failed for me in terms of why am I working with Cerberus, and why can't I just go back to the Alliance, and who are these collectors, and why are they harvesting? This is like the second time in 3 podcasts this has come up. Why are they harvesting humans to make a giant robot human?
It's just what they do. It's what villains do in video games.
I can't get past their stupid plan.
I think also I think the moment you sort of meet the Reapers and hear their voice, they lose a lot of their menace, because they're, as Chris has said before, they are just big old lobsters, aren't they? But nonetheless, actually, I love the third game as well, actually.
Yeah, me too. I haven't played it since they changed the ending. And I also, to my great shame, I never played the Citadel DLC, which I heard was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be a really nice opportunity to go back and experience it all in one.
Yeah, it's quite... Citadel is quite a sort of soppy send-off for all the friends that you've made along the way. There's a brilliant party scene where you go around and everyone gets drunk. It's just very good. It's just very good stuff.
I wonder how that would feel just sort of integrated into a single playthrough, because a lot of these DLCs came out well after the fact, and so you've already played it, and Citadel sounds like it's designed to sort of to be played after the fact. You finish the game and you sort of go back and experience this. Because I remember the Deus Ex, not Mankind Divided, Human Revolution, the DLC for that, the Missing Link, I really love it. It's the one that fixed the boss fight, so they figured out how to do a boss fight in proper Deus Ex fashion.
Yeah.
But it really, I think it works great as a standalone thing. I think it's really fucking weird if you put it in the middle of the game, because it's like you lose all your orgs.
That's right.
Sort of have to reset your progress track just for this bit, and then I guess you wake up again. I don't even know how it works. When you wake up again in the main campaign, I assume you get all your old orgs back, do you?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And also, you lose your trench coat, and then your trench coat magically reappears once you complete the DLC and go back into the main game. So yes, it's quite a strange one. It's a great bit of DLC, though. I really enjoyed that campaign.
Yeah.
Do you know if they're are they sort of mechanically zhuzhing up Mass Effect 1?
They said something to the effect of we're not looking to remake it, but to sort of give it some sort of make it look nicer and tart it up, basically. So they sort of downplayed how much differences we can expect.
So do you think the combat will be the same as it was in Mass Effect 1?
Yeah, that's
taking the model.
Seems likely.
That's the worry, I think, because that's the thing that got really way better with Mass Effect 2, and I think got better again in Mass Effect 3. They got really good at making combat in that game. I really like, another thing I loved that they came into along the way was the class system. That I think got better with every iteration. Like Mass Effect 2 is the one that made every class work and be fun. I played Vanguard in that, which is I
loved Vanguard.
I think it's biotic in combat, is it?
It's the one that lets you
their main ability.
teleport.
Yeah, you sort of dash into things and send them flying.
Oh yeah.
And
Super.
Thane's chapter, where you're sort of going through like a high-rise complex in a sci-fi city, knocking people off the edge of that building was so fucking fun.
God.
Yeah.
And then
I've
Mass
forgotten
Effect
about
3
that.
had this really nice had a really nice system where they sort of let you customize classes so that you could take it was like the more weapons you take, the slower your abilities recharge. So there's a really nice like trade-off there where you could decide to have travel very light, just take a pistol or something, then all your abilities are going to be super fast cooldowns. Or if you want to load up on heavy weapons, then you're going to be able to use your abilities less often. That just worked really well for me.
Really underrated multiplayer modes in 2 and 3 as well. Had fantastic fun playing sort of co-op against it's basically horde mode stuff, but it's the fact that you could unlock characters, including a Volus, which is a kind of like tiny sort of mole man, and the animation for his dodge roll is just like absolutely. It's just watching an egg just sort of like spin sideways about 2 meters, and I could never get over how good that was.
That does sound great. Can you play an Elcor?
Sadly not. Though amazingly in the lore, the way that Alcors fight is that they're basically sloths, but they basically mount rocket launchers on their backs and then they're mobile artillery basically, apparently, based on some codex entries I read, and I don't know why I still know that, given that I played this game 10 years ago.
Just think of all the things in life you forgot, but that one stayed.
I know. Just for that piece of knowledge, all of the language I learned at secondary school, Spanish is gone, but Elcor combat techniques.
There's ever a military context in which you need to know that information. It could be life-saving.
I could be deployed, yes, absolutely. It's that
No,
thing
they're Elcors. They can't dodge roll. They're going to come out with artillery.
They could just sort of lie down. You've got to keep them at the back.
God, you're here, Tom Senior. They'll say all the 4-star generals will turn to you.
It's like one of the,
here.
like if someone gets a bit ill on an aeroplane and someone shouts like, "It's a doctor." On the plane, like there might be a moment where I am required to stand up and deliver my Elcor knowledge of military tactics to save the day.
Is there a law nerd on this plane?
Everyone raises their hand. So all games journalists travel together.
He still died of that peanut allergy, but he knew a lot about Elcor as he went.
Yeah, he sure knew about the history and culture of the species of the Volus. He finally
what it looks like when they dodge roll.
He took that into the afterlife with him. Godspeed.
No, stay with me, damn it! You've got to know what it looks like when an egg does a dodge roll.
The last words recorded on the black box as they pull it out of the ocean.
It's the pilot who's got the allergy. Only they could have dodge rolled the plane away from that mountain.
Anyone excited about new Mass Effect? The last one was a bit dodge.
Yeah, like I guess cautiously interested.
It sounds like it doesn't really exist yet. It sounds like it's been a long time before we actually ever see it. But also, they're probably going to have to redo the entire premise, given that Andromeda was not terribly well received.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's about like, have they fixed their company? Because that sort of expose of how Andromeda happened. Even though I know, I quite liked most of what I played of Andromeda. I know Chris is a fan. But even given all that, the actual process sure sounds awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, the terrible phrase, find the fun, when you've got like a lot of employees working extremely hard. It's like, you probably find the fun quite early on, shouldn't you, before plowing on with this enormous AAA project. But yes, there's always room for more Mass Effect in my heart. I love that series.
Yeah.
You had a bit of extra gaming news, didn't you, Tom Francis?
Is this the mountain goats thing?
Yes, if you want to.
Okay, good.
Yes.
The check really doing
This is real news. It's real news.
So, John, I'm going to take a stab at the pronunciation. John Darnielle of the Mountain Goats, the singer of the Mountain Goats, which is a band I like. Just a weird little fact I have in my head is that he likes Magic the Gathering because and I don't know enough about Magic the Gathering, so if anyone knows the answer to this, tell me. He made Mythic, is how he puts it. And I don't really know what that means. It sounds like like making platinum in StarCraft or something. Like it's a league or something maybe. But it sounds like he's hit some major milestone in his Magic the Gathering playing career, and he sang a little song about it just with his guitar. And the song is really funny because it's just talking about Magic the Gathering mechanics in a very in a way that I don't understand. Like he's using loads of jargon terminology, but also he's basically saying his deck is total bullshit and it's just horrible to play against. And that was just a little cute little detail that endeared me to the Mountain Goats. And I googled it to try and find the song for a friend. And what I discovered is that there is a Magic the Gathering card called Mountain Goat. The Mountain Goat is a unit in Magic the Gathering that you can deploy. And it can, let me see it, its converted mana cost is 1. It uses red mana. It's legal in Legacy. It's legal in Commander. It's legal in Vintage. It's legal in Duel. It's legal in Pauper.
Pauper?
It's in the Ice Age set. I don't know what Pauper is, but that's a link. This is information Google gives me, like a breakdown when I search for Mountain Goats Magic the Gathering. It has like a legality section in the sort of info card, and I can even click on Pauper and find out what that is. Google doesn't know, but I think it's all cards must have been printed at common rarity in a Magic set or product. So right. Mountain Goat's common, I think, is what it's saying.
It's definitely common if it's 1 red mana.
Yeah. You're telling me. I totally understand that. It has Mountain Walk, which means it can't be blocked as long as the defending player controls a mountain. That means like it's jumping from the mountain to attack. I don't know.
That's because goats are flipping awesome at mountains. Have you seen those things?
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. I don't really understand it. It seems like I remember thinking, you know, that theory that sort of because there are an infinite number of parallel universes, for any given thing you can imagine, there's a universe out there that's exactly like ours, but that one thing is different. I feel like the fact that goats are good at climbing mountains is the weird thing in our universe. Like somewhere else, there's the standard universe, and that's not at all true because it doesn't make any sense.
But they're sort of, again, we're getting away from video games, and the reason is there's no news. Just you see them standing on what appears to be like a sheer, almost vertical cliff face, and they're just like quite casually there chewing something. And
and with like hooves, which they're not like flexible. They can't grip things. Like why?
Yeah, they don't have like miniature claws on them, like some animals.
Spiders.
Yeah.
That's a different universe.
Good God, a horrifying one.
The clawed spider goats.
Oh no! You've just invented a new Magic the Gathering card there, Tom.
Yes, that should be in it. That would cost 2 red mana at least.
It's a bit better than the goat. They eat the goats. I love the fact that we're in a period where 2 new next-gen consoles are coming out, and the news that we've chosen to discuss of everything we could have talked about is this. But absolutely no regrets. We made the right decision.
It's not even new. Like neither of these things happened recently. This is a while back.
That's how Crate and Crowbar does news. Like we're barely at the cutting edge. That should be our tagline. Barely at the cutting edge. July
30th is when this news happened.
Well, we failed to talk about it then, and I'm glad we've rectified that. I think we've done a fine job here this evening.
The great injustice has been solved.
Rectified, absolutely.
What have we been playing? Tom Francis?
I have been playing Watch Dogs Legion, which is a game I was pretty excited about. It's the Watch Dogs series is a GTA with hacking, and the twist on this one is that you can play as anyone, i.e. every NPC walking around the city is not an NPC because you can play as them by walking up to them and starting recruitment. And when you do that, basically they will say, oh, you DedSec, right? I got a problem. Please go and investigate some terminal somewhere. And then you do that, and then there's another job, and then you do the other job, and then they work for you. And that means you can play as them. And I guess the first thing to say about it is that it's an ambitious concept, and I'm glad that they took it on. But it does mean that you spend all of your time playing, thinking how it could be better, because you just kind of, there's 9 million people in the city. You can play as any of them. There isn't really any chance that they've done justice to that promise. It's kind of the No Man's Sky thing where you sort of you throw out a concept out there that's so tantalizing that the players or the audience's brain jumps to all sorts of conclusions and extrapolations from that broad concept, and fills in details that actually the game itself is not going to flesh out in the way that each individual person is hoping they will, because it's too vague and everyone's going to imagine their own thing. Like, what does a playable character mean? In some games that means they have their own story. In some games that would mean that there's a whole skill tree to upgrade with them and stuff. And neither of those things are true here. And you have to sort of just, when they were talking about this, I was always kind of waiting for the other foot to drop or the shoe to drop, like thinking, okay, well, what you've just said can't be true. So what have you done? Like, you haven't literally made 9 million playable characters. You've done some kind of formulaic thing to, ensure that any given combination of traits and perks and stuff works. And everyone has a voice. Everyone speaks in VO during missions. And so you don't have 9 million voices. And the first concrete thing we got out of it that made it seem more real was that there's actually, I think it's 20 personas, which is to say, I think they have fewer than 20 different voice actors for protagonists, but each voice actor has done multiple different sort of takes on that persona. And that's, they seem to sort of, they didn't open with that, right? That came out months up into the marketing campaign, and this sort of felt like a concession of okay, we've got to give some specifics because the vagueness thing is I certainly wasn't buying it, and that made it more exciting to me. Like, if you tell me something that I can believe in, then I'm more interested in this game. And anyway, when you play it, it's even more impressive that they have that many different personas for the player character, because the player character there's a whole story campaign. Even though there isn't a single protagonist, there's a whole story campaign in which the protagonist speaks and has conversations with people, and they don't know who you're playing as. You could be playing as any one of those 20 different personas / 9 million people. And so they had to voice the reactions to every single thing. And I believe they are more than just, they're script changes as well as just, it's not the same line delivered by a different voice, because these personas are, I actually think that a lot of the VO is very good. I think there are a lot of these voices, there are some that are kind of painful, but most of the ones I've heard sound like they actually are British, or in some cases Scottish, or from wherever they're supposed to be from. And some of them are just feel very recognizable and feel very, they don't feel like an outsider's impression of a British person. Some of them do, and one of my problems with it is that a huge number of them are very posh. Like, I would say more than half of my characters that I've recruited have very posh voices, and a variety of different very posh voices. It's not the same voice performance. It's just that there are a lot of posh people in my squad for some reason. And actually the main person giving you missions has quite a sort of posh voice, and that feels slightly at odds. That feels like the stereotype of Brits outside of Britain is that half of them speak like Prince Charles. But yeah, you do. Basically, I've been having fun with it. I found it very addictive. I played it quite intensively, and it works best when you are doing something that you've decided to do, when it's player directed stuff. And recruiting people is like that. You can scan anybody, find out what traits they have, and you might decide that trait looks interesting to me, so I'm going to recruit this person. And the traits are things like one that comes up a lot is tough drunk, which is completely useless. It just means that when they're drunk, they take less melee damage. It's like, well, how often am I drunk and being punched? Like, I can make that happen if I want to, but it's not like an advantageous tactic, really. And other things like, this one is a skilled investor. And so that means while they're on your squad, you get more money from everything that gives you money. And you can get on to have a certain uniform. Like if they are a construction worker, then they have a construction uniform that you can either wear that or you can wear their casual clothes. And while they're wearing the construction uniform, you're allowed into any building site. And it kind of turns into Hitman at that point, where you can't get too close to the guards because they'll get suspicious, but you can walk through all the security sensors and stuff because you're basically authorized to be there. My first experience with it was kind of not great, because one of the big questions is like, it's not just voice acting. It's if every one of those 9 million people, you can walk up to them and there's a recruitment mission to get them on your side. What are those missions? How do you make 9 million of those, or 18 million? Because they usually have to do 2 missions to recruit somebody. And the first thing I did in the game is I was walking around. I saw a building site that was a restricted area, and so I scanned one of the guys in a construction uniform, and his traits were that he has the construction uniform, which means he can get into these areas, and also he has like a pet cargo drone, and cargo drones are the big ones that you can stand on. So basically, you hack one of those, and or if you have a pet one, you don't need to hack it. You remote control it over to you. You climb onto it, then you go back to remote controlling it, and now you can just fly up to the roof of a building or whatever. So I wanted to recruit this guy, and I talked to him, and he says that at his last job, he was chemically burned, and he wants me to look into it. And so that, in practical terms, that means basically go to another restricted area somewhere in the world, get to a server, and download some details of what happened at his last job.
Sorry, Tom. When he says chemically burned, does that mean he just got smack talked to death, or is this a sort of actual like a terrible employment error?
I think he's talking about actual chemicals.
So he's like the Joker from the first Batman film. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no visual burning on him. It was basically the gist of it was that I should investigate this company and find out. He thought that it was happening to other people as well. Like, this is the reason to look into it is not just to find out for his sake, it's to prevent it happening to anybody else.
It's a mystery.
And so I go to a server and I hack it, and I learn where basically it boils down to your annoying AI sidekick Bagley says, oh, it turns out that the nasty chemical that they were dealing with is in this crate in this other restricted area. And so you go to the other restricted area and you get to the crate. The crate is this, I'm going to describe this because it will come up several times. The crate is like a very flat coffin-shaped thing on the ground. So it's very low, quite wide, a bit wider than a coffin, but that kind of shape. And it's in a very heavily guarded Albion area. Albion are the private military corporation that have sort of taken over London. And have tanks in the streets and stuff, and I'm very under-equipped because it's right at the start of the game. But I sneak past some turrets and I get close to this crate, and I don't see any way to destroy it. Like, I was expecting like an interact option to sort of sabotage it in some way, but there's nothing like that. You can't interact with it. All I've got is the standard DedSec pistol, which is like a taser pistol. It sort of fires this electric round, and so I try shooting it with that. Despite being a taser, that like alerts everybody in a 2-block radius. Like, the police are immediately after me. Like, that is treated as a full volume gunshot, even though it doesn't sound like that, and also it doesn't look like a gunshot. And also, it doesn't seem to hurt the crate in any way. There's no sort of reaction from the crate. It just fizzles out. And so I try shooting it like one more time, and nothing happens at all. I can't see any way to damage the crate, and so I end up just having to flee the area. I get out alive, but I have not destroyed the crate. And so I'm starting to realize I need a gun. And I carefully sort of snuck up on a guard, took them out, found someone with a gun, took them out, and then discovered I can't pick up the gun. I don't know why. It doesn't say. It just doesn't come up as an interactable object, so I can't take guns from anybody. And so I sort of deduce that, I guess like a gun is like a character trait, because when you scan people, they'll have a gun listed as if it's a character trait, like all the other stuff that they have. And so I basically patrolled the streets. You can technically you could recruit any guard. I can't recruit the guard I just beat up, because once you beat somebody up, they hate you. And so fair enough, you can't recruit them. You can never win them over after that point. But normal guards have like a standard dislike of DedSec, so they're harder to recruit. You have to do more missions to get them on your side. But I just scanned civilians until I found somebody who had it's like a lady in a suit with very sort of stern-looking glasses, who just happens to own an MP4. That's her character trait. She owns an MP4. And so I scanned her, and I talked to her and started a recruitment mission for her. And she said, oh, at my last job, I was fired. And the weird thing was they fired everybody all on the same day, even though all of us had been doing a good job. And I've moved on with my life, and everything's fine with me, but I just can't get this out of my head, and I want someone to look into it and find out why this happened. And what do you know, that turns into going to a restricted area and hacking a server to find out what happened. I do that. I find the restricted server, I hack it, and then Bagley, the AI guy, says he sort of processes the data you download. You send it to him, and he interprets it and tells you what's going on. And he says, oh, it turns out what's going on is they introduced an AI to replace everybody and replace everyone's jobs. But good news, the AI is in this crate in this other restricted area. Like, wait, really? The AI is just like in a box? And so I sneak into this other restricted area, which is kind of a cool space, actually. It's like there's like a mall, and the lower floor of the mall is a restricted area, but it's also on the river. So instead of like a street between the shops, there's water between the shops. I don't know if this place is real. I'd be curious if this exists. But I go there, I sneak past all the guards and the drones and hack some turrets and get to the fucking AI thing. And it's the exact same crate. Like it's that low, flat coffin-shaped thing that I have no way of interacting with in any way. And this time I decide, fuck it, I'm going to take out everyone in this whole area. I've been doing it stealthily before now, and now I sort of slowly take people out as best I can stealthily, and then I get caught by a drone, and so it becomes an all-out fight, and I just kind of take cover and gun everybody down with my DedSec taser pistol, because I still haven't recruited anybody at this point. I'm still trying to get anything done. And once everybody is unconscious and it's all, I've got free roam with the area, I investigate this crate more properly, and I still don't find, I try shooting it again, doesn't have any effect, can't pick up anyone's gun, still can't interact with it, can't find any like computer terminal nearby that might sort of remotely destroy it. And eventually I just try pressing the punch button, which just like, it doesn't punch the crate, you just sort of punch above the crate, like as if you're attacking a full height human being, but that breaks the crate. And then that wins the recruitment mission, and I get the lady who has an assault rifle. And then I use the lady with the assault rifle to go back to the other restricted area and just like climb a high building and shoot the crate from a distance, because I can't be bothered to infiltrate the whole place again. And that gets me the construction guy, and now I've got both of them. So that whole system of sort of generating missions, or I wouldn't even call it generating really, it's more like a pre-written quest where the actual specific location of the server you're going to have to hack is randomized, but this isn't like generating an instance for you to go to. This is the open world of London has only a certain number of restricted areas that are pre-authored and pre-built. It's got loads of them, so it's not too restrictive, but the quest generating system seems to basically pick a pre-written quest, assign it to a pre-made restricted area, and then you go in and you break into it
and punch a coffin.
And punch a coffin. Since then, I have to say it's not like every mission involves punching a coffin that has an AI in it. Like, we put the AI in the box. There are some where you have to sort of take out somebody or get close to them and hack them, which is kind of fun. And yeah, they're not too repetitive, but it does feel like they sort of they try and dress up something that is very formulaic as if it's not very formulaic. And that only works like the first time that you get that mission. The second time somebody also got fired from their job and everyone else got fired from their job and they moved on with their life, but they're still hung up on this thing and they want you to investigate it. And when you investigate it, it turns out it was an AI. Like, there's no facade or pretense at that point. Like the veil has fallen. This is you can't do that mission twice. It's way too specific. And so I kind of think they could have done more generic missions like that. Like, if it has to be generic and it's going to be repeated, don't make it too specific and don't make it too like voice acted, because having that repeat is worse than it just being super vague in the first place.
On the topic of dodgy accents, which it sounds like this game does reasonably well, I would like to recommend to everyone the trailer for Wild Mountain Time.
Oh, no.
Starring Emily Blunt, Jamie Dornan, Christopher Walken, and John Hamm. And just watch the trailer. It's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster of disastrous accents, and also just horribly old, tired rom-com cliches. It's sort of a work of art, and I've no need to watch the film. I'll just watch the trailer again for a laugh.
The thing I find myself wanting playing this is, and this is what I was saying at the start, is like you spend all of your time wishing it did more or went further or built on these ideas. It's really, more than any other game I can think of, it's crying out for a sequel. Like, it really needs a second stab at this now that they've figured out the basics. And I don't know if it'll get it, because it has been a bit of a mixed reception. It's got a lot of like 6s and 7s in the reviews. I don't know how it's sold, but obviously if this doesn't seem like it's landed commercially, then it's unlikely they'll do the same gimmick for the next one. But it'd be a shame if that's true, because what you really find yourself wanting is for some kind of like relationships between these people and some way to invest in them. Like the game really tries to persuade you not to play with permadeath. Like permadeath was part of the original concept that as I understood it, was that these people could die and you can run out of people and you can lose the game because all your people died. And then when you start the game, it asks you up front, hey, permadeath is off by default. Do you want to turn it on? And then even if you do turn it on, it doesn't take effect for the first like 4 hours of the game. There's like a long tutorial kind of period where they won't let anybody die. Because even there's a very short tutorial at the start where you're playing as a pre-written character, and then most of the tutorial you're playing as whoever you chose. You kind of start with a single recruit. And that person can't die for that whole tutorial series. In fact, no one can die for that whole tutorial series. And then after that, they sort of warn you, okay, now permadeath really is on. But then even then, multiple times I got somebody mown down by assault rifles, and they just kind of wake up in hospital and they're fine. And so it seems to be like each time you get taken out, there's a chance your character could die. And it's weird because, I mean, it really feels like they did some playtests and there are some people who absolutely threw a fit at the permadeath thing. Like, I'm willing to bet there was a few testers who ran out of recruits unexpectedly and were just like, this game is bullshit, I'm never playing it again. And so they're so careful not to push that on you. Like, so it really seems to be trying to tell you, don't play with permadeath unless you're really, really sure. But to me, that's the whole point. Like, if there's no permadeath, then they all just become like, why not just play as my best guy all the time? You know, and unfortunately there is kind of a best guy. Like there isn't enough. This is another thing I wanted to go further in, is like, I wish when I was given a mission, I had some reason to pick a particular recruit for that mission. And so the very thin version of that is that, if you're going to a Clan Kelly area, which is like this gang you're fighting, and you have a Clan Kelly recruit, then sure, play as that Clan Kelly recruit because they have the uniform so they can walk in, and as long as they don't get too close to guards, then that will be easier for you. And that's okay, that's fine, but it's very, what's the word? Like absolute. It's just, because you're going to this area, you must pick this recruit. Or there's no reason not to. You'd be crazy not to. And everything outside of that is just, well, it's really just whoever's best at combat, because not that the game devolves into combat all the time, but hacking and stealth, you almost always do that with a spider bot. And a spider bot is a thing that any of your recruits can use. Everyone has a gadget slot, and what you slot into there is not unique to that character. In fact, it can't be unique to that character. It's only stuff that is generic to all of your DedSec recruits. And the two starting options are a spider bot or a cloaking device. And the spider bot is infinitely better, and it solves all problems. And because you're always standing outside a restricted area, you can throw a spider bot over the fence into that restricted area. Nobody really notices it very easily. When you remote control it, you can then sneak around unseen. You can hack almost everything in the game. You can hack with a spider bot. There's only like a couple on story missions. There might be an elevator you've got to reach and you've got to physically get to it. But things like hacking a panel to unlock all the doors in the area, you can do that with a spider bot. Things like getting a key card from somebody. Well, it's not really a key card. It's like a key code. So you just hack that from a distance with a spider bot. Hacking, turrets, enemy drones. You can do all that with a spider bot. Even when it's something you have to physically pick up, like tech points, these are the upgrade currency in the game, the kind of the most important resource. You can just pick that up with a spider bot. And even like a safe that you have to open and physically get something out of, you can do that with a spider bot. And the spider bot can also stealth kill. So if you get up to anyone unaware, they can just jump on them and like do a face hugger move and tase them in the face. And that's just like a standard ability of spider bots that you can do right from the off, which is really powerful. And then even if they catch the spider bot, one of the hacks that you can always do is to kind of distract or disrupt somebody. So if they haven't seen you, you can distract them, and that means they won't see you, and you can stealth kill them. If they do see you and you've got the disrupt upgrade, which is like a global thing all of your recruits and all of your drones can do, then even after they spotted you, you can still just disrupt them, and then that lets you do a stealth kill on them. And they can, once you do upgrade the spider bot, it can cloak, and it can double jump, and it can sprint, so it moves too fast for everybody to see. And this just kind of, it breaks the whole game, really, because now recruits don't matter. It doesn't matter what the traits of my character is, because spider bots are what you actually spend your time using if you want to do anything stealthy. And so what I was saying earlier is that I end up picking the best recruit to pick is the one who's best at combat, because the recruit is irrelevant unless the stealth fails in some way with a spider bot. Something goes wrong. Somebody sees you, face hugging somebody, and then there's they call reinforcements and it breaks out into a fight. And they do, once they discover a spider bot, they're pretty quick to sort of shoot you when they see you. They don't know for sure it's you, but sort of they get ultra suspicious. And so the only time your recruit matters is when that happens, in the worst case scenario. And at that point, you just need someone with a fucking gun, because you're just going to have to mow everybody down. And it's such a missed opportunity. Like, why isn't proficiency with bots something that can vary per character? Like, I think the ability to remote control a spider bot to climb up someone's leg, grapple onto their face, and tase them to unconsciousness should be something that only some characters can do. Like, it's weird that everybody knows how to do that, and it's way too powerful if everybody can do that. And the ability to cloak your spider bot, that's just a global upgrade you get. It applies to everybody, and it's super powerful. And so, again, why does it matter who I'm playing as if the spider bot just solves everything? And then on top of that, there's a whole bunch of things where you literally have to use a spider bot. There's like special vents that can only be accessed by spider bots. So even if you thought of a clever way to do this, that even if you're determined to not use the spider bot for everything, sometimes they just force you to use a spider bot. And in case you didn't take the spider bot, people's houses will just have like fucking spider bot dispenser next to the spider bot only vent. And it's just, for fuck's sake, like, why don't you just play the mission for me? Like, if you just have to dictate that this is exactly how I must do it.
It sounds like they could have given the spider bot a Cockney accent and then just be done with the rest of the game.
That is the true protagonist. That should be on the cover of the game, just a little spider bot. The rebel spider bot that you get that doesn't come out of the spider bot dispenser is sort of graffitied up to make it look like, resistance spider bot. Oh, no. But it's still just a fucking spider bot.
Best spider bots in games. I don't know if you guys ever played Galapagos, which was a kind of AI training game where you had to try and guide an AI entity through a series of platforming puzzles. But no matter what you did, the spider bot remained a flippin' idiot and would never actually, accomplish anything that you wanted it to do. But if anyone wants to go back into the archives to find a good spider bot, then that's a PC gaming one for sure.
I would love to read an article on the sort of history of spider bots through the ages in video games, because I remember them. They were in Crusader No Remorse, was the first game I played with that, and where that game had tank controls, I think, or very weird keyboard controls anyway. And remote controlling a spider bot was always this like high stakes thing, because they blew up the second they hit anything. And they couldn't stop running, I think. You just had to steer them like they were going to run at full speed, and you just had to like hope you didn't bump into a wall before you bumped into the people you wanted to blow up.
It's like those hens from Spelunky 2. Not hens.
Cockles. Oh yeah, turkeys.
What are they? Turkeys, that's it. Yep, they keep going until they explode or die. Explode or die is not actually an opposition.
The only way I can live is if I explode. Yeah, there were little glimmers of cool stuff with the roster of recruits, where sometimes one of your recruits will get kidnapped, and this is totally outside of your control. This is just one you're not playing as will suddenly be abducted, and you have to go and rescue them. And that's immediately cooler than any other mission you do, because this is the stakes here are something that's unique to me. It's this character, and how much I care about that character is going to vary depending on who got abducted. And so sometimes it's I have a cool like spy lady. She got abducted, and that made me super invested in rescuing her and making sure the job didn't go wrong, and being very cautious of like, I'm not gonna. They're handcuffed, and as soon as you uncuff them, they're going to follow you around. And so I'm not going to uncuff them until I've totally secured the area, because I really care about keeping this person alive. And that's a level of investment that's way higher than anything in the story missions. The story missions, unfortunately, involve a lot of remote controlling drones. I thought I was going to give up on the whole main campaign at one point, because it forces you. There's a bit of spider bot stuff where you got to make it through these like moving laser grids, like kind of like a heist movie, but if you touch any of them, it doesn't. It basically just resets your progress. Like the door locks, and you've got to go back to the start and do it all again. And there's like 6 of these different patterns of laser grids, and I was failing the first one like 70% of the time, and each one gets harder afterwards. You have to sort of jump over them while they're moving, and it's really unclear where your hitbox is and what's going to trigger it. And also, it's just like transparent lasers on top of transparent lasers on top of transparent lasers, so it's really hard to see what's going on. That became less annoying when I realized the cloak facility that I have on my spider bot actually works for those lasers, so I can just cloak and run through it all. But then the next thing is you control these tiny little drones, and there's always really arbitrary fail states of God, I really hate like wind in games where there's like fans that blow you into the wall, but it's really hard to read which bits of the air is moving here, because in real life you wouldn't see it at all, and in the game they try and give it like a sort of gust effect, but it's really blurry and sort of doesn't fill the whole area that is actually affected. And so you've got to sort of guess where the geometry is technically blocking that airflow. And then you die to the next bit because the room is orange, and you shouldn't move into the room when it's orange, because that, apparently I was supposed to understand, that means the room is incredibly hot and it will incinerate my drone. And so now I've got to go back and I've got to do the vent thing again. And that's a huge pain in the ass.
That's not how vents, lasers, or rooms work.
Yep.
So gamey. So weird.
Yeah. It is a shame.
Is there anything good about it? It doesn't sound.
Yeah,
like
I do realize I think just I do much prefer having my own choices. You know, people I chose. I'm often choosing people just because they look cool, like they're just wearing cool clothes, and I think, oh man, I really want to like play as that person just because they seem cool, and that's really rewarding, and I feel really invested in those characters when I play as them. I definitely have really strong feelings about different characters in my roster. Like that spy lady is super cool, and I love her. I also have I recruited this Clan Kelly gangster who is wearing Clan Kelly, like have their elite troops have these really scary like balaclava masks and goggles and these red and gold trench coats, and they have like really nutty devices like homing bomb drones, and the one I got is like to throw out a secondary spider bot which just has a little turret that zaps people, and it's really powerful. And she has that and a light machine gun, so she's absolutely armed to the teeth. My best combat unit by far. But then her voice is this really like chirpy, sort of happy-go-lucky voice that seems really like game for everything, and is like is a super good person. Like whenever you recruit somebody, they turn out to be an absolute saint, because it turns out their personal quest will be like, I saw some gosh darn crime, and I want to go and investigate it and get these scoundrels, and so you help them with that. And yeah, she wanted me to my recruitment mission for her was to go and like chase down some Clan Kelly people. Like she'd found that Clan Kelly were doing some crimes. Like she is a gangster in the Clan Kelly gang, and the fact that they were doing some crimes was news to her, and she wanted me to go and fix it, and that let me recruit her. And so she became one of my favorites because she's super powerful, and also just her attitude is really an amusing clash with her whole personality. And then another one, I was on a story mission right in the kind of bowels of an Albion facility, really heavily guarded. And there's these 2 elite guards in the final room of this mission, and you've got to solve this really elaborate hacking puzzle while, well, they're in the room. So you've either got to take them out or you've got to try and do it without them spotting you. And I took the first one out, and then the second one, when I scanned them, I thought, shit, this person has like a personal cloak as their gadget, which means that's in addition to whatever gadget you give them. So A, they could have cloak and spider gadget, or I could give them the cloak, and then they've got 2 cloaking devices. And they've got a really good weapon, and they're sort of dressed in armor, and they look really cool. And so I decided I'm not going to kill this person, because even if I non-lethally take them out, they will always know it's dead sec and that you can never recruit them after that point. So I decided I'm not going to take them out. And then at some point, when you complete the hacking puzzle, immediately like 13 enemy troops just flood into the place, and you're forced into a combat situation. And I tried to hide and like do stealth takedowns on some of these people, but I got cornered by the one I wanted to recruit, and I thought, shit, I can't attack you because I really want to recruit you. It's probably the most interesting like set of abilities that I've seen on a recruit. I've bookmarked you, and my only priority is I don't want you to hate me, and so I just kind of let my character die. I just let her mow me down because the one I was playing as, I didn't really care about that much, and then just it failed the mission. I lost all my progress on the whole mission, lost the recruit permanently. But I had bookmarked this really interesting recruit, and I went off and recruited them. And of course, as always, they had this like, oh, I think there might be a drug dealer over here, and I want you to stop them or whatever, which is very weird for this like absolute, like, she looks like a fucking robot skeleton in this like terrifying armor, like absolute badass enforcer.
Does the drug dealer
lady.
turn out to be a coffin?
The drug dealer's in that box. Just destroy it. No, it was a bit better than that. But anyway, I recruited her, and then she was. Sure enough, it was super cool to have a cloak as a secondary gadget, because you can take the standard dead set cloak and they're on separate cooldowns, so you can just like cloak almost all the time. I used her to do the very mission that I recruited her from, like the mission that I failed to get her. I just thought, well, she's my best guy. I'm going to go in and do it as her. And so I get to the final chamber, and like, first of all, I work here. This is my job. Like, I should be able to walk all the way to the final piece of this mission, because that's literally, not only do I work for this company, but literally my post is that room that I'm trying to get to. But that doesn't work that way, unfortunately. I do get the bonus for having an Albion uniform, so I can slip past a lot of guards, but if I get too close, they get suspicious, which is very strange to me, because I'm literally supposed to be here. This is my job. This is my shift. I'm supposed to be here now. You should be suspicious of me if I don't break into this facility, because I'm skiving off work if I don't come here. Anyway, I finally get to the final chamber, and there's two guards there again, and the one closest to me is this is the same kind of elite that I took out last time that I don't really care about, and the one on the far side is an elite with their own personal cloak. So basically my replacement is there, and they hired somebody with the exact same traits as me. And so I got to have like a personal rivalry with this person. Like, okay, this time I will fucking stealth kill this person, because A, they took my job, and B, I don't need to recruit them anymore because I already have a recruit like this. So yeah, you do have these little, like, you go on these little personal journeys with these recruits. You know, that was not a very good story mission, and restrictive in some ways, but my personal investment in the person I encountered there totally changed how it worked, where my whole objective became to just recruit them, and I didn't mind if I died and lost the whole mission. And then coming back there as that person and meeting the person who replaced me in my job was really funny.
How's London?
It's quite cool. I kind of said this last week when we had the question about places and games. It's definitely giving me more real world vibes than I've had from any other in-game video location, just because I know London better than the setting of any other open world game I've played like this. It's got a slightly weird vibe to it. I always find it slightly strange that they sort of chose to futurize things like the double-decker buses, so that those don't really feel London-y. You know, they are a red double-decker bus, but they've been cyberized so much that it doesn't sort of have that feel to it. I also lamented last week that the London Underground is there just as a sort of icon on a map that fast travels you to other icons on the map. You never get to ride it and sort of interact with the map and stuff, which would have been really nice if sort of made it feel more London-y. But it is really nice just to like get to know areas of London. You know, the way when you play an open world game, you go between A and B enough, you get to know that whole area, and you sort of develop a sense of direction. You kind of know when you need to cross the Thames, and you know which bridge you need to take and how to get up to that bridge, because you're if you're going down the wrong street and you're too close to the Thames, you won't be able to cross it because you've got to go further inland to get up onto, you know, Tower Bridge or whatever. I really like, if I'm going to be learning an open world, I like that I'm learning something about London while I'm doing it. I have mixed feelings about the whole revolution aspect. It's sort of, I feel like broadly its heart is in the right place. Like, this feels another thing where I'm sort of going to criticize them for trying when actually it's good that they're trying, and the fact that they didn't sort of make good on it 100% means that the conversation around it will be mostly critical, whereas fucking GTA 5, which has no aspirations for anything positive at all, and it's just miserable, hateful people being hateful, gets a pass because that's the genre, it's gangsters, yay. So I applaud it for being a game about revolution and being anti-fascist in its sentiment, but I frequently feel, I don't know, just uncharmed by it because it is so eager to tell me, yeah, we're fighting the power, this is the people rising up against the man. And so every time that feels gamey and it feels tropey and borrows, you know, sci-fi cliches and all of that, I feel a bit uneasy about it. And yeah, it falls flat on those times. and it's sort of, I guess it's just that when you borrow the theming of Revolution in a commercial product that is released to make profit, it's always a little bit of an uneasy thing, and unless you're going to really sort of say something specific and meaningful, it feels a bit cheap. And it's interesting. It's an educational thing for me because I'm making a game that is going to have some themes of Revolution, and I will also, like Watch Dogs, the primary goal of my game is not to, support a real world revolution, or it's not a political goal. It's to make a fun bit of entertainment and sell it. And so it's informative to kind of see where, like, what you can and can't do, and when it starts to feel uneasy in a game like this.
Interesting. From Ubisoft's depiction of England to Ubisoft's depiction of England, you've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, haven't you, Tom Senior?
Yeah, or Assassin's Creed Van Halen, as I like to think of it, because it's solid heavy metal Viking stuff. You play as Vikings in this one from Norway, and very early on in the game, the Vikings, a sort of king emerges and decides that he owns all of Norway, and everyone just buggers off to England to invade it, which gives rise to the amazing command, press triangle to raid, which is a thing that happens quite often as you're traveling throughout the world and is extremely entertaining. I think this is one of the best Assassin's Creed they've made since perhaps Brotherhood for me. It's still Assassin's Creed. It still has like the foibles that Assassin's Creed has, but I think what they've done is they've stripped out, or at least hidden, a lot of the RPG elements and the sort of level gating and a lot of the things that I disliked about the last two games. Though I think that the world is not as sort of revelatory or glorious as ancient Egypt or ancient Greece. I think Origins in particular, which is an extraordinary place to explore, one of the best gaming worlds I've explored ever, I think. But this is England, where we're from, and it's weird to see it presented so in such like idyllic terms. Like it's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful autumnal tones everywhere, forests everywhere. The Romans have obviously left the country, but you have all these beautiful crumbling Roman ruins before they eventually sort of sunk under the earth to explore. And yeah, it's kind of got me thinking about what our country actually used to be like, because apparently, like, so this is England before we had a kind of a massive agricultural livestock economy. And apparently what happens when cows graze is that they chew at the grass, but they also eat up the seed layer below the grass, which stops trees from growing. So what we actually see today in modern England, these bare kind of beautiful mountains, they should be forests like Germany. And that's kind of what the game does actually represent. So I feel like I always get a bit of something educational from Assassin's Creed, and I think I've gotten something like that from this. And also, I get to whack a man with an axe really fast over and over again. And I'm a big fan of that. So I've got the incredibly unconventional combination of an axe in the left hand and a flail in the right hand. And what I desperately want to achieve is to have two flails. And they'll be like, "So Tom, what's your combat style?" My fighting style is poi. I've been to Glastonbury, I've seen them do it, but now the poi have spikes on them and they kill people. Part of the rowing back from the RPG stuff is the fact that combat is much more like assassinations actually kill people, for example, which eventually became an option you could turn on in previous games. But I think that it's great that that's kind of default now. Your power difference is well flagged and also not as punishing as in previous games. So like if you hit someone with an axe about 5 times, they're always going to die, because that's how axes work. And that's a great relief. For me, like, the movement feels a lot sharper. You no longer have to hold 2 or 3 buttons down to free run and climb stuff. You just press X and then just maneuver around, or press circle to go down. There's just like hundreds and hundreds of little incremental improvements to the game feel of the thing. I hate the word game feel, but the actual moment-to-moment way that movement and action feels is just way superior to the previous two games for me. There's some stuff that like is a problem with it. I think, Marsh, you've run into this stuff as well, in that because you're a Viking, you're not terribly popular around the world, especially not in England, which you've just invaded. So you tend to get attacked on the street a lot, but there's no way really early on of knowing like who's going to try and kill you or not. There's a cloak you can wear, but I think a lot of the tooltips are a bit too hidden. I don't think the game teaches you some of the skills that you need to actually survive and traverse the world quite as well as it could have. Like the onboarding process is, you get some fun missions, but you don't. Yeah, it doesn't quite equip you with everything you need. Also, I haven't encountered any characters as good as, say, Cassandra from the last game. And also just the husband and wife pair in Origins. Again, just a brilliant, unusual. You just never get married couples as main characters in games, and that was just a wonderful dynamic.
Yeah. Does Ivor improve over time? Ivor's the character you play in this game, and you have an option to play them as a male or female, but I assume their voice lines are much the same regardless. And so far, I've not escaped Norway yet. I haven't made it to England, but she's just a bit of a prick, really.
Yeah,
and you know,
I agree. There's not much to him as well. Like he's just sort of following along with his brother.
It's just vengeance and honor and hard drinking, which is fine because that is obviously the Viking stereotype. But you don't. It's kind of shit to spend that amount of time with the Viking stereotype. It turns out. Whereas Cassandra, who was also, plundering.
She's a warrior.
But she was also evoking a lot of the kind of braggadiness
right.
of kind of the Greek heroes. But at the same time, she was much more personable, and she had depth to her, and there were lots of missions which exposed different sides to her. Whereas so far, it's just been pretty much one note, honor and Valhalla and vengeance.
And there's also like a distinct lack of humor, which is what made Odyssey particularly good for me. Like Cassandra could throw a joke in, even though like she's dealing with like proper serious stuff. And
she's got some good insults, though, Ivor.
She got some. Yeah, that's true. And I do miss that. I find all the characters a bit flat so far. I played about 5 hours of it, and who knows? Like more characters might emerge. I do feel like Ivor, can't remember how to pronounce their name, but I do feel like he's one of the more boring protagonists in Assassin's Creed. And it seems sort of like with Assassin's Creed, it seems to go in shifts. Like one game would be funny and great, like Black Flag was really funny and just really entertaining and has really great characters. Odyssey did, and now this one doesn't, and the one set in London didn't. So I don't know, it just sort of goes back and forth depending on, I don't know, the writing team that gets assigned to a particular project at Ubisoft. I just find it quite interesting. It's also, it is gorgeous, but earlier on today, I was venturing into a tomb in Noble Tamworth, which, as a man who grew up in Birmingham and has been to Tamworth, there's nothing wrong with Tamworth. It's lovely, perfectly nice village.
How are its tombs? Are they good?
There are no tombs there, but it was this glorious sort of glowing, verdant landscape. I was like, that's not Tamworth. Maybe it was once upon a time, but I've kind of they've given England a massive glow up, to use modern parlance, in a way that I feel is I enjoy moment to moment just wandering through the world, but I don't find convincing as someone from the country. But yeah, I wonder what you're still in Norway, aren't you, Marsh?
Yeah, I mean, this was my my fear of what they would do with the English landscape, because all the videos and screenshots I've seen, it's very much a kind of heightened landscape, and all the buildings are just way bigger than they were at the time. Like even things like bridges, the bridges they've got are like 4 times the size of bridges that would have existed then, which is fine. I'm not a bridge pedant. I am a bridge pedant, but but also I think there is something sort of inalienable about the landscape which lends sort of a credence and also a feeling of mystery to the British Isles, because it was this horrendous place basically, which no one wanted really for a long period of time. And it was a place where the Romans came repeatedly, lost their fucking minds, and then fled.
Because it's in the arse end of nowhere. Like our little island is in the arse end of nowhere, really, isn't it? And we don't really have any resources that they particularly want to mine. So it was almost conquering for the sake of conquering at that point for the Roman Empire, I think. And yeah, this sort of this game attempts to glorify the country in a way that I think is inaccurate, but I understand why they would do that to make a game look nice.
I'm interested in the forests though, because all the screenshots I've seen have notably not featured forests. But as you say, England was 25% forest back then, and they would have been really thick, almost as thick as the Amazon jungle kind of ancient forests of a kind that we don't have today.
That's right.
Does it approach that at all?
So I'm in Leicestershire at the moment, amusingly, they do actually accurately recreate a lot of the old names for these shires, and they have about 5 times as many syllables as they do now. So I can't pronounce it on this podcast. But yeah, there are forests there. I really hope they do there's areas where there are proper massively thick forests, because that's the environment that existed in that time before industrialization and mass farming.
I have just a mechanical question. In Odyssey, all of your gear that you accumulated and stuff, you had to basically choose. Did you want gear that was going to increase your assassin damage, or your warrior damage, or your hunter damage, which was bows, basically? And so I was basically okay with the whole RPG leveling thing because it allowed me to specialize in assassination. So I just all my stuff was to boost my assassin damage, and that just raised the ceiling on how high a level a guy I could one-shot stab. And I know they've changed something about how assassination works. Can you still specialize in stealth in that way?
You can. So they've moved that onto both the skill tree and the armor that you wear. So there are different classes of armor, like wolf is one, bear is one. I can't remember what the other one is, but they all represent the raven, and they all represent different specialties basically. And one of them is stealth. I also quite like the fact it's got a very ambiguous skill tree. So by which I mean you can invest a bunch of skills in a node, but you can't see all of the nodes that will result from that. So you're kind of gambling on. So I went for strength, and then that opens a different node, which opens a different ability, and that to me that makes a game out of the skill tree in a way that I find quite interesting. And also I love the fact that they've tied a bunch of special skills to discovery on the map. So there are wealth nodes, and some of them will just be money, but occasionally you'll find a scroll that gives you a whole new ability to stamp on a man's head or something, which is literally my main go-to thing at the moment.
What did the scroll say?
The scroll's
just stamp on him.
When enemy down, strike like Thor with foot to face.
It's one of the shorter sagas.
That's great because I really enjoy the exploration in the game, because it gives you an impression of the type of things you're going to get, but it's not until you actually reach the destination that you actually receive the reward, and the rewards are varied enough to always be exciting and interesting. So that's why I keep pressing triangle to raid, because I know there's probably something good in there, and even if it's just some coin or some ingots or something to do some minor crafting, that's fine. But occasionally I'll find something awesome, and apparently somewhere in the game you can find Excalibur. I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I'm going to play this game to find Excalibur. I'll play this as long as I have to find that sword. So I just the sense of exploration, the sense of discovery, the beauty of the world, even though it is kind of a bit weird as someone from England playing through it. I think it's just enormously successful, and it's much more of an action game than the previous 2 games as well. I think it's much sharper in terms of countering, parrying, actually attacking, doing damage, even if you're dual wielding flails in a poi style, which is my aspiration.
I have found Excalibur in both of the 2 roguelikes that I have been really into in the last few months. I maybe won't name them just in case it's considered spoilery, but it's in both. So I'm happy to complete the trifecta.
Yeah, get Excalibur in this one. It might be. I mean, I don't think it's going to be as good as 2 Flails, but there's only one way to find out.
Of the 2 flails stuck in the stone. Should we do some questions?
Yeah.
I think we should. Yeah. That was very.
Big, weary
That was a very.
inhale.
that was a middle energy.
Yes.
Hell yes, I meant to say. Hell yes.
There you go.
We have a question.
Fuck yeah, let's answer these bad boys.
Our first bad boy is Ken to you is from Ken to you, possibly Ken to. This is his first time writing in, and English is not his native language, so he regrets this already. He says, "Actually, it's a really good email, but it's quite long, so I am going to synopsize it. But it's not to do with your use of English, which is spot on." He says, "Hi CNC, I'm feeling a disconnect with the gaming community now, and this stems from the fact that Watch Dogs Legion didn't really get the sort of rapturous reception that he thinks it should have done. He thinks it is the first GTA clone where NPCs on the street really matter. But he says game reviewers didn't really dig it because of the gameplay-focused AI and systems-driven stuff in the game means that everybody gets this different experience and some people just don't get anything from it at all. And so, yes, has that ever happened to you, that a game excites you so much despite a lukewarm reception from critics? Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Best regards, Kenturu.
So, I am the master at appreciating lukewarm things. That's become my that was my game journalist brand in a lot of ways. So like stuff like Darksiders 2, I think it's a 7 out of 10 game, but it's a 9 for me just because of the things I like and the loot system and the combat system and stuff like that. I think it's an interesting point about like the way that games are received and how they actually tint your ability to appreciate stuff. So I think I often think if I've read fewer reviews, I might enjoy games more. I wonder what you guys might think about that.
I don't really read any reviews, and I'm still an absolute asshole, so it hasn't helped me. But I'm just interested in his thought about how systemic games of this kind are a real dice roll, because sometimes the system just spits out a set of circumstances which certain players will just hate.
I wrote about this for Edge about XCOM. The new XCOM games.
Oh yeah,
where dice rolls are like particularly, vital to your experience. And if the dice rolls resolve as expected or as anticipated by the player, then you have a good experience that's quite tense. But if the dice rolls go against you every single time, which is quite possible, then you're going to have a very bad experience. And actually, one of the ways that Firaxis deals with this is to lie to the player about right. the odds it actually uses when it's calculating these shots. And I think that particularly in chance-based games, this applies to card games as well. Like in terms of what you get drawn, what you're allowed to mulligan, you could just get screwed over by the odds. You just can. And if that happens consistently, and you're at that end of the kind of bell curve, then yeah, the game's going to suck for you. So I think a lot of smart game designers guard against that with systems that let you re-roll, reload saves, or just lie to you about the odds and actually make the odds a bit more in your favor than you think they are.
I think this is relevant to the recent reception of Spelunky 2 and Hades, because Hades, one of the things that's interesting about Hades as a roguelike is it isn't that different each time you play it. Like, the main thing that changes is what weapon you bring to it, and also what upgrades you get offered. But the enemies are very similar each time, and it doesn't feel like you're going on a new adventure. Whereas the whole thing in Spelunky 2 is the level itself is completely different the next time you play it, and the arrangement of the elements in the level, even if you're familiar with all the elements, them in this arrangement creates a new challenge. The actual challenge itself is different each time, which is great and exciting to me as a game designer. But it does, especially with Spelunky 2, where it's tuned very, very harsh, you have whole periods where I've just been completely kind of oscillating on it, where I have weeks where I just hate it. I'm playing it every day, and I'm just every day I am frustrated and just it's so brutal and unfair at times. And for a while, I was misinterpreting this as like me. Oh, I've reached my limit. I've played it too much, and now I don't like it anymore. Or it's just actually fundamentally not that great, and I'm hitting up against that. And then the next week, I have a load of good runs, and I love it again. And it's a brilliant game, and I love it. And I've realized like, oh, this is just dice rolls. This is just what happens if I was literally just gambling at a casino, I would have weeks where I love gambling and weeks where I hate gambling, and I would remain addicted to it, just as I do with Spelunky 2, because it's basically dice rolls. And I think that's also part of why it isn't as big a hit as Hades. Hades is a massive mega hit, and Spelunky 2, I think it's done about as well as Spelunky 1, maybe a bit better. And Spelunky 1, it's absolutely the holy grail for game designers. Game designers absolutely fucking love it, but it didn't catch the world on fire to quite the same extent as the mega hits of the time, like Braid and Super Meat Boy and stuff. And actually, Binding of Isaac is a better comparison, because that is a roguelike, which is absolutely huge, like 10 times the size of Spelunky by Steam reviews at least.
I think that sells perhaps as well.
And Hades, A, the runs aren't that different to each other, and B, there's persistent progression in it, so you get better all the time, because it just by force, like the game just gives you points that make you literally better at the game than more powerful than you were before. So everybody has an upward curve on it. Everybody is the game gets a bit easier for them as they play, and they get to feel like they're making progress. And Spelunky is merciless about you get no help. Spelunky is the kind of game that would never lie to you about your percentages. It's always just brutal. It has to be exactly this percentage chance, and you'll if the dice screw you, the dice screw you. And obviously it doesn't actually have like chances to hit or anything, but just in terms of the arrangements of hazards it throws at you. And when you whip an urn, there's a chance it could be a fucking poison scorpion that just ends your run immediately. And they're never gonna sugarcoat that. Like if the last urn was a poison scorpion, I am pretty sure the chance of the next urn being a poison scorpion is the exact same fucking chance. Like there's no code. I don't think it like gives you a break or has any mercy. And I wonder if that's part of why Spelunky 2 isn't as big as a game like Hades, or if just in general being a bit kinder and a bit more reliable is a better route for commercial success, at least.
I think this is a slightly different tack, but actually there's a long history of game designers creating the illusion of danger while actually protecting you from death. And one of the examples I can think of is like Valve games, like the Half-Life 2 games, where they would intentionally very closely miss you because that was more exciting than actually getting hit and dying past a certain point. And then Call of Duty does this to an extent as well, where I think enemies' accuracy gets lower the more you're injured. So again, it's keeping you alive, it's keeping the process going while also creating tension.
Do you think this is true of Watch Dogs Legion?
It's not my experience of it, because as I said earlier, a lot of my criticisms are about how similar the experience is no matter who you bring to the mission. Part of my issue is the missions themselves. The main story missions ask you to remote control a drone, and therefore it doesn't matter who is remote controlling the drone. And then even on the open world missions, you don't have to do it with the drone, but I just found it was always better to do it with the drone no matter who I'd brought with me. But it is true that there are some characters who are way more interesting than others. And if you get like a hitman character, they have the gun kata skill, which means that they can basically, in mechanical terms, it means you can do a melee takedown on anybody, even if they're already like aware of you and shooting at you. And in practical terms, the way you do that is basically shooting them at close range. So doing those sort of cool, like John Wick style combo takedown things where you sort of, it's a mix between like a judo throw and shooting them in the face. And I remember seeing that in a video for Watch Dogs, and I don't know, it left me cold for some reason in the video. And then when I got a character that could do that and I could just run into a restricted area and just run up to everybody and shoot them in a really stylish way, it felt awesome. So if you don't get anyone like that, you miss out on that experience. So it is true. That's true to some extent. But again, another problem I had was that the best characters, those with those really cool, unique skills, were given to me by the game. If you conquer a certain area, liberate a region of London, there is a specific reward for that. Like this, you liberate this region, you get a hitman. They give you a hitman. And I was never finding those people, organically. I was just being given to them by the game for completing certain objectives. And so I was inherently less attached to those characters because they've been granted to me automatically by some magic means. It's not even really narratively clear why conquering this region of London gets you a beekeeper with a magic bee exploding gun.
Hang on,
that wasn't part of the mission I did.
Does his gun explode bees?
Yes.
Because that would be he makes him a terrible beekeeper. That's literally the opposite of what he needs to do as a beekeeper.
Let me find the exact words, because I did tweet it. It was something like, it's called the Energizer or something, and no, what's it called? The Overcharger causes a bee swarm to explode non-lethally.
Not possible.
So,
as we said, exploding and dying.
It's explode or die. Therefore, exploding is non-lethal. And then the other confusing. This is a character that's. I mean, what the hell? Let's go deep on the beekeeper.
Yeah, let's do it.
This is a character that has many contradictions. It's never explained to me, at least, what their job really is. They are wearing like a protective bee suit, which makes them immune to shock damage, because I guess it's also a Faraday cage for some reason. Their special ability is to like. This is not the Overcharger, but their special ability is to like direct a swarm of bees at enemies. But they're like cyber bees. They're like metal nano bees, I think. And nano bees sounds like a fast food chain. But after you've sent the swarm at people, you then aim the Overcharger at them, and that non-lethally explodes the bees.
Is it? Oh, hang on. So
I think the sentence. It's a dangling modifier, obviously. Like I don't think it's the bees that explode. But I don't think it's non-lethal to the bees. I think the bees are done for once they explode. But the explosion they create is non-lethal to the target.
They conduct a taser-like charge. Okay, we're sort of like headcanon trying to make this up in our own brains as to how this could possibly work, but it sounds flipping stupid.
Well, I'm
fine with that. It sounds great.
There's a not too terrible sci-fi concept underneath that, which is perhaps in this future all the bees are dead, so we've created miniature drones that pollinate plants in their stead.
That's literally a Black Mirror episode.
Oh, is it? There you go.
And not a great one.
That absolutely does not mean that isn't what Watch Dogs Legion's lore is, because a lot of bits of Watchdog feel like they just watched an episode of Black Mirror and like, yeah, let's put that in.
Yeah, fair enough.
Our next bad boy. Bad boy is a gender non-specific term, I should hasten to say. Is Mr. Wendell.
Can it be?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Who writes in to say, I'm enjoying text-heavy Torment Numenera much more now that I've started taking quick breaks from it to play short bouts of arcade shmup action. I usually play one game exclusively until I'm done with it, but I think without breaks I'd get burnt out on Torment. What games or genres do you find pair well together? Cheers, from Mr. Wendell.
I have not been pairing games specifically in that way, where I'm alternating between playing them, but I have been, when Crusader Kings 3 came out, rather than play it myself, I watched my friends Jack and Kat play it on their Twitch stream while I played Forza Horizon, because it was like the sort of least thought engaging game and the most mentally taxing game. And I can do that simultaneously as long as someone else is playing the mentally taxing game, and I just have to play the dumb one.
I have exactly the same thing. So I've been Assassin's Creed Van Halen has very long load times, and in the interim, I've been playing Crash Bandicoot on my Switch, which is just it's the most simplistic game, but it's just kind of a mind snack,
right?
Like that replaces boredom, and it's just kind of. It's there for you, and it's fun, and it's colourful, and that's how I use a lot of these sort of side games.
Yeah, I like. I'm always playing Hunt Showdown in between whatever else I'm playing, so that doesn't really count.
That's quite an intense choice.
Sorry, it's not intense for me anymore. I just it's like a nice walk in the woods to me now.
Do you not get mown down by brutal strangers and feel anything?
No, I don't feel anything anymore. But no, I can't really get to sleep unless I've seen like a disemboweled horse screaming.
Oh, I hate those things. Yeah.
That's how I chill out. But also I find that I do like I do need some sort of vegetation sort of game where I can perhaps watch television at the same time or listen to a podcast. And then I play something like, it's not necessarily a game that doesn't require intelligence or forethought, but it's something which is distinctly non-verbal, like Noita or Teardown. Actually, was really good for this, I found, which is great, by the way. I've completed it now, and I think it took me about 30 hours. So there's an awful lot of fucking stuff in that early access thing, and it gets wild as well. Like, you think it's going to be just a game about building, parkour routes. It's not at all. There's like helicopter gunships in it.
What?
There's escape sequences. There's all kinds of stuff. It really mixes it up in interesting ways, and does really interesting ways of reinventing the existing levels that you've already played. Anyway, it's really cool. I love it.
How many actual areas are there?
I can't remember now. 6, I think. It's but there's also, or maybe
I think I've been
5.
to like 4 of them, and I was just wondering how much more.
Maybe it's 5. I can't remember. But there's one that you can't seem to access from the sandbox mode. You only play it once. Cool game. I can't wait to see what else they add to it. I think this is just turning into Teardown chat now, but in terms of extra tools, I think you should definitely have. I really want a lawnmower.
Yes.
Maybe something...
The ultimate destruction.
Or maybe a roller, or something that just flattens stuff. Compacts it, maybe. What are those things? You see people doing it on tarmac, where they're standing on this big sort of... looks like a drill, but it's just got a big square plate underneath it and just sort of compacts the tarmac beneath them. One of those.
And then Jim Carrey playing as the Mask gets flattened under it and then sort of pops up again.
Yeah, steamroller vehicle seems viable, actually. You could do that.
Have we answered that question? I feel like we sort of answered
We certainly went around in some circles.
Is that as...
which is as good as we could hope to do in most of our podcasts.
Someone who hasn't supplied a name says, Dear Apes and Glowworms, last week, episode 347, a few of you expressed concern towards the representation of Africa in Far Cry 2, writing that it might just be a tourist's point of view. I'm here to put those fears to rest, in brackets, mostly. I'll spare you my life story, but I've been an African resident for the entirety of it. When Far Cry 2 came out, it was wonderfully exciting to get to murder people in my home continent for a change. And despite the different biomes being a tad too close to one another to be realistic, I welcomed the variety and was highly impressed by the feel of the environments. Hearing expletives being shouted at me in my native language is a real highlight. They did good Africa shooty bangs. My question, are there any other games that even attempt to use African bushveld as a setting? P.S. The malaria mechanic was total bullshit, though. I love the malaria mechanic.
Oh, do you? Why?
Really?
I think... I love the malaria mechanic, and I love the guns breaking as well.
Why though? Is it why? Well, let's get to the psychology of this before we answer the question.
Because it's these are necessary. I have to say the guns breaking is more fun than the malaria mechanic, but both of those things are there to inject basically chaos into any plan. No plan that you have in Far Cry 2 survives any single encounter with the enemy, because by the end of it your gun breaks, you've probably set half the savannah on fire, and there's like jeeps pouring over the horizon. Maybe you get out, maybe your car breaks down, and then you fall over from malaria into a pool of mud, and that's great. That's what it's meant to be about.
Never start a land war in Africa. The only other game I could think of off the top of my head is Metal Gear Solid 5. I don't think it's the same region that the questioner describes, but you do like this strong open world Africa segment there. But I can't speak to how accurate it is to be shot or sworn at by people in that region. But I think that's worth a mention.
Well, one of the Halos is set in Mombasa, which is not as far south, but obviously that is a highly accurate depiction of
It's an unused
Kenya.
setting, has to be said though. I'm sure there might be more games.
Yeah, it is. I didn't. We didn't say this last week, but I do think one of the kind of exonerating factors in setting it in Far Cry, in setting it in Far Cry, in setting it in Africa,
Only place for it, really.
was that it was at that time especially just completely underexposed as a setting in really media. So it was really refreshing and interesting. I think. Meant in a noble way, even if it comes across as maybe slightly patronizing in some senses. Tom writes to say, Dear CNC, in episode 3 of the Creating Crowbar, it was revealed that Fez 2 had been cancelled, but nobody believed the Phil Fish tweet at the time. Do you believe it now? Cheers, Tom.
Yeah, fair play. It's not looking good for Fez 2, is it?
No, it's not. I don't think it's on the cards, no. That was so long ago. Episode 3, my God.
Yeah. That really takes me back.
Why now? What's the cutoff point now that Tom thinks has finally determined?
I don't think there's a precise one. I mean, I think maybe when, for some reason, this is a very stupid logic, but it's the moment he left Twitter. What was the end? I was like, okay, you don't really want to sort of promote your games anymore, and you're probably not interested in making games anymore, which he explicitly said. And at that moment, sadly, the dream died, because Fez is wonderful.
Although I'm always skeptical when people quit Twitter, and a more recent example was Notch quitting Twitter, and as soon as he did, I thought I'd give it like 2 weeks before he's back. And in fair play, like 2 weeks later, he was not back, but he is back now. I didn't catch the moment, but I checked in our break, and he's back.
He's back. It's like Nigel Farage, isn't it? It's just some sort of virus that keeps back up over and over again, whether you want him to or not. God, that was off topic. Sorry. But yeah, it's true. I know what you mean. Yep. Quitting Twitter dramatically is a form of self-promotion. That's certainly true.
Yeah, and they're sort of the deep in the psyche of like rich men is to need to be on Twitter and need to talk on it constantly, despite their many advantages.
And often poor opinions. And on that note, I'm announcing that I, as a man on very much a median wage, I'm quitting Twitter right now. It's after this podcast, it's all gone. It's all gone. And if you want to bring me back, you're gonna have to give me attention or money. I don't care which. Ideally, both. I'm not really. You can still find me on Twitter. It's fine.
Thank God.
Get my hot Assassin's Creed takes, like the one I tweeted earlier about how my favourite thing to do in Valhalla at the moment is to walk through a fire in a hearth. Is that how it's pronounced? Hearth? And then, hearth, I think. And then start a conversation with someone when my legs are still on fire. And I just watched the NPC completely fail to recognise the terror of that situation. Very good
the
game.
Viking hello.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I get before we move on to the final question? Can I ask you about my hot Ubisoft related take, which is that I'm going to bet right now a total sum of zero money that they're going to be bought by Google.
What?
To make exclusive games for Stadia.
I will take that bet of zero. Because why?
Well, because well, for one thing, the Ubisoft Plus thing, which I've subscribed to actually, so that I can play both Watch Dogs and Valhalla for the princely sum of £13, and then cancel the subscription next month.
Nice.
That doesn't seem to be sustainable.
No.
For that reason.
No.
I can't see a reason that Ubisoft would do it. They just don't have a deep enough catalogue for that to continue funding them making the same sort of games. Maybe they end up switching to a different sort of games, or maybe we just don't. Maybe they've got a much healthier attach rate for DLC and cosmetics than we see. Maybe, but I suspect that allowing people to play two of their big tentpole franchises for £13 probably isn't gonna keep the lights on. at the same time, they have. I mean, this is not a particular sign of anything, but I mean, they have signed up to make Ubisoft Plus part of the Stadia package. I can't remember the exact arrangement there, but they're obviously talking. The two companies are obviously talking. And it would be useful for Google to have some sort of reason for anybody to play Stadia stuff.
It's gone terribly, hasn't it? Like, it seems to have died in the water, doesn't it? Like,
well, some people from our own Discord have said that they've been given complimentary access as a result of being YouTube subscribers,
right? Okay,
which they do in order to get to
influencers,
because they have no, I don't think that's the reason. I think they have family accounts on YouTube so that their kids can watch it without getting bombarded by adverts.
Oh, that's a much more reasonable explanation.
So I think all of these things, these different facts together, may could result in no, you're not buying it.
I think
at all.
this might be another Fez 2 prediction moment that in 5 years' time might come back to bite us. But the great thing about making these predictions is if it comes right, you will be treated as a kind of god sage, and we will celebrate that on this podcast to the maximum.
Come on, Eve, make it happen. I need the ego boost. I'll never leave Twitter. Then I'll be insufferable.
What an incentive. Make it even more uncanny by guessing how much it'll sell for.
Ooh.
Oh. I mean, given that Codemasters went for nearly $1 billion, which is ridiculous.
Somehow.
Yeah. How many Codemasters is one Ubisoft?
Oh, it's got to be a lot.
It's going to be a lot, isn't it? More than 10.
Yeah. How much did Microsoft buy Bethesda for?
Good question. I'm going to Google it.
I can't remember.
7.5 billion.
Then it's definitely more than that, because I thought that was quite a good deal for Microsoft.
Yeah. It's got to be more than that for Ubisoft, right?
You would think so.
Let's call them up and negotiate the deal ourselves and take a sweet 10% off the result, and then retire the podcast.
Just conference call Google and Ubisoft. Just say, "Hey guys, I got an idea you probably haven't thought of."
We can make this happen. Are we qualified to do it? No. Are we determined? Yes. Why? Because we like money.
And then with that 10%, we will fund the development of Fez 2.
Yes, quite right. We'll bring Phil Fish out of retirement. I think of Phil Fisher's like Zarathustra, kind of like on a mountain top in a cave, waiting to be brought down back into society to produce great things. And if we can make that happen, then that's a good mission.
If you're wondering how I got that 7 billion figure so quickly, it's because I typed in Minecraft by Bethesda. Google is just that good these days.
Yeah.
Like, I know
you mean.
You misspell all of the words, but
there you go. Live facts on air that we should probably have known beforehand, but so that's how these things go. Is that all the questions we have?
No, we've got one more.
Oh, sweet.
It's from another Tom. One of the many Toms that we could have had on this podcast.
So many.
Hi all, he says. A few weeks ago, Manifold Garden was being discussed, and it was mentioned that Piranesi was a great companion piece to the game. I've since completed both and wholeheartedly agree to the extent that I feel like reading and playing them both at the same time. Oh no, that's not how the sentence goes. To the extent that I feel like reading and playing them both at the same time heightened both experiences. He wasn't literally reading them both at the same time. That's a disappointment. Anyway, this brings me to my question. What other combinations of game and book or other medium do you think would complement each other well? Another pairing question. I do have one for this, though, which is that at the time, or recently after the Return of the Obra Dinn was released, I read The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is a time-bending murder mystery by a guy called Stuart Turton. It's a real romp. It's really good, but it feels twisty and convoluted and brilliant in the same way that Obra Dinn does. But Stuart Turton, not content with that comparison, has just released a murder mystery set on a fucking boat. So there you go.
Yeah.
It couldn't be even more. It's called Devil in the Dark Sea. I've just finished it. It's also very good. I recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
I would
Cool.
pair Perdido Street Station by
Ooh.
China Mieville with Anachronox.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Perdido Street Station is like quite a serious novel set in a futuristic city. It's about multiculturalism and interaction between different species and that kind of stuff. While Anachronox is a game about meeting the most absurd companions in the universe that you could possibly find and making friends with them. And I feel like there's a through line there somewhere. And I might be wrong, but that's my recommendation. And I stand by it.
Excellent.
I just want an excuse to talk about the Mistborn books, so I'm going to randomly pair them with Dishonored, I think. Not entirely randomly, because both are sort of fantasy dystopias with a very sort of dark world. But actually, the main reason I want to mention Mistborn is it's a book that is a book series that is crying out to be made into a game. Because the whole reason I got into it actually is because people kept saying how good the magic system in it is, and how sort of it's one of those system-y systems where the author actually has a sort of logic for how it works and will adhere to that in the book, which I'm an absolute sucker for. And yeah, I can't believe it hasn't been made into a game, because the magic in it is achieved by burning metals. Only certain people can do this, and most people who can do it can only burn one type of metal, and that only gives them one ability. So if you burn tin, it enhances your senses. If you burn pewter, it enhances your strength. And by burn, you have to swallow them first, and then your body burns them. Like the way I think in real life your body burns iron, right? It can. Like that's the chemical reaction that breaks it down is like a very slow burning process.
I think we should check that with the doctor.
And don't swallow iron on my account, but I'm fairly sure that's how it works. But anyway, like in the book, there are scenes of people, for example, burning like steel to fling themselves. Steel is almost like a magnet thing. You can sort of push yourself against metal objects if you're burning steel, and burning these letter metals in the service of doing like a raid at night to steal some atium, which is another metal, which that's the really precious one, because when you burn that, you can see the future a little bit. And the idea of having each of these individual resource pools and having to manage those and use your abilities wisely and sort of switch up which abilities you're using to make sure you don't run out of any one resource until you can acquire this other more precious resource that you then use to pull off an even more ambitious heist. It's so gamey and so like rich for a game system.
God, yeah, that's absolutely perfect for that. It reminds me weirdly again of like Avatar: The Last Airbender as a system. Like, it's unfortunate that it was called bending because it undersells
Yes.
the powers that each sort of class of warrior has in that game. And I mean, many attempts have been made to adapt that in films horribly, but it feels like there's a good game in there as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Tom also asks for generic book recommendations, if you have any such things.
I'm rereading Dune, as always. I'm sort of always rereading that book, and it's so weird that the old adage, like show don't tell. The way that Herbert writes is the absolute opposite of that. Like,
yes.
he literally puts you in the heads of every single character in the scene, and in italics tells you exactly what they're thinking, which is a very strange way of writing. But I still find the world he creates to be fascinating, even though I've fallen out of love with his actual writing on rereads, I would say.
I recommend a collection of short stories by Ted Chiang called Exhalation. And there are some stories in that are, I don't know, all of them are kind of interesting. All of them have an interesting concept. This very high concept sci-fi of like, what if there was a world where this was the case? But the opening one, the very first story, is about time travel, sort of through the filter of Arabian Nights. And it's really, really good. It's just one of the best short stories I've ever read. Just completely gripped me from the word go. It has a kind of nested structure where in the middle of this story, the narrator recounts telling a story to somebody else, and each time that happens, I found myself completely like so eager to hear the next story and to delve into some new digression. And its treatment of time travel is really cool. I think it has a different twist on it, and there's some commentary from Ted between the stories explaining it. And he said one of the things he wanted to do was tell a time travel story where you can't change the past. That's often a constraint that time travel stories already do. But he says that often those stories are kind of depressing. It's sort of like you can't make things better sort of message. And he was interested in writing a story where you can't change the past, but take a kind of positive and very wistful spin on it. It's quite sad as well, but has a kind of quite a warm ending. I really like it.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it does sound good.
He's the author of the book that damn it, it's a novella called Story of Your Life, and there was a sci-fi movie based on it. Arrival is based on his book.
Huh. I've also been rereading From Hell, which is a very long graphic novel.
That's fantastic.
It's absolutely fantastic. Written by Alan Moore, with absolutely gorgeous line art from Eddie Campbell, and the way
it's so dirty.
Yeah, the way it interweaves, like the way it imagines culture at that time, but also interweaves mythology, history, with the kind of with the story of Jack the Ripper is exceptional, and just like something that I can't stop rereading because I always get something new out of it. Yeah, that's a splendid graphic novel.
It's what's so good about that is that he, the story itself is a fantasy as much as it is a historic fiction. But at the end, because he's obviously done his research,
absolutely,
there is just probably the best and also fully illustrated analysis of all the facts of the case as they stand.
Yeah,
and a history essentially of Jack the Ripper histories, which is incredible.
And Alan Moore calls Jack the Ripper a superposition, which is basically like I think he means almost like a meme that exists throughout history and changes according to the cultural tendencies of the time, and that's kind of what he examines in From Hell when Jack the Ripper, or the person who he supposes to be Jack the Ripper, travels through time almost and sees the future and sees even further into the future and kind of gains a kind of catharsis through his terrible murderous habits. It's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. And I think there is a movie, but I think it's unfilmable. Like, I think you can't do this. Like, it exists in this medium, and it's obsessively done in 9-panel pages. That which is absolutely maniacal. It must have been really stressful for Eddie Campbell to actually realise this, and sort of a very early spread of the guy who he supposes is Jack the Ripper encounters his first dead body and closes his eyes while his parents are chatting in the background. It's just what a thing to draw, what a thing to put in a graphic novel. This really kind of deep, formative moment. I can't recommend it enough. It's very, very good. There's lots more to discover. But do buy it. It's great. It's also incredibly violent, as you'd expect. Yeah. I mean, it would have to be, but they don't shy away from that, which I also think is kind of does show respect for the history, because a lot of the time Jack the Ripper is a kind of like a joke villain.
It doesn't ever become salacious or kind of prurient, and I think the art is really part of that, because it is this, like I say, it feels dirty, but it's this really kind of unglamorous. The art's really good, but it obviously has this sort of aesthetic style which makes it feel quite unglamorous, very scratchy.
Scratchy is exactly the word I was reaching for. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. And also, I think that the story does more respect to the victims of the actual criminal than most do, even though it can be fantastical at points. I think it's just a masterful graphic comic. I don't know how to go on to that.
Better than Watchmen, I think.
I agree with that. I agree. Love the Watchmen TV series though. That was really fun.
We're gonna hear somebody discussing the ins and outs of that at some point.
I think there might be a film and television podcast coming up in our feeds in the next few weeks where Jamie Britton, writer of Skins, and I probably go over it. And the way that, frankly, it introduced me to a part of American history that I never knew existed, the Tulsa Massacre, and the way that kind of they also mix that with surreal and consistently surprising twists and turns throughout the series. But Jamie has some problems with it, and I can't wait to argue with him. So look out for that in the next few weeks. The second episode is edited, is basically ready to go up. Just need to do the show notes. So that this week or soon is when that will go up, in which we talk about Marriage Story and other rom-coms and loads of classic British TV series. So yeah, look out for that in your pod feeds.
Well, those were all the questions we had time for. If you'd like to send us a question, you can send them to questions@creatingcrowbar.com, or you can tweet us at creatingcrowbar. You can check out these recordings as videos on YouTube, and you can find other stuff there by us, which is youtube.com/creatingcrowbar. Our Patreon, where you can send us money, is patreon.com/creatingcrowbar. And our Discord community is really, really nice. And you can find the link for that on our website at creatingcrowbar.com. That's it. I've been Marsh Davis. I'm now going to dodge roll in a comical way into bed.
I've been Tom Senior, and likewise I will do that. I need to change my Twitter handle because I've left my old job and I can't therefore be referred to as PCG Ludo. Probably just, I don't know. We'll see.
I've been Tom Francis. I'm Pentadact on Twitter, and I'm not going to dodge roll into bed because it's 3 p.m. where I am.
Dodge roll into the bar.
I was going to dodge roll into my desk and do some work, actually.
That's actually sensible. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
We can't time it over this call. That's trouble.
Yeah, I'll just pretend that was all lag and it wasn't my slow reactions.
All right.
3,
2,
2.
Oh, God damn it.
1.
That's everybody.
Thanks for everybody.
Yep. Flawless.
That'll do. It's all
Flawless.
Nailed it.
staying in.